Hello, my name is Victor Lambert III. I am a junior food science major from Wheaton, Illinois, and today I will be discussing with you all the physical and psychological impact of pre and post slaughter stress on animals and their meat quality. So before we begin, I want to be talking to you guys about the table of contents, and I'm going to be discussing everything that I will be going over in this presentation. Firstly, I will go over is what is stress? The reason we need to know what stress is because before I tell you any of this other information, I need you guys to have a general understanding of what this means, why stress is important to talk about, and how it can affect animals. So, firstly, we'll be talking about what is stress. Secondly, we'll be talking about a few stress hormones that animals have, that will also share in common with humans as well, where they come from, what they do. We will talk about how stress is measured pre/post slaughter. We will talk about how stress affects animals physically and psychologically, how stress can also affect the animal's meat quality um, post slaughter. Why do we care about their stress and about these animals in general? What stress looks like in different animals, the stress levels of animals, these are all visuals, and the long term stress versus short term stress, conclusions, and my final thoughts. And then lastly, my preferences. So let's start and let's get into it. So, firstly, the first thing I'm discussing is what is stress? Stress is defined as a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. These animals sure are having this definition down to a T because being an animal moving from one place to another is absolutely very stressful, especially when it's an unrecognizable place to them. Stress can happen due to external or internal factors such as emotional or physical damage or trauma. Some of these animals do experience trauma, whether it be from them being loaded onto these uh, trucks or carts or whatever it may be. This is stressful for them. Physical damage can also accumulate from that as well. If not handled properly, these animals can hurt others as well as hurt themselves. Stress leads to the release of ATP, which can cause muscle tightening and stiffness because it is energy. ATP can be released after death, but it can also stay tight and stay clenched after death as well, causing what we know as rigor mortis, also known as the stiffening of death, which if a meat product or an animal is experiencing rigor mortis or has gone through rigor mortis, I apologize, then their meat will be tougher and a worse quality. And a couple more examples of stress are injury, illness, and lastly, fear. So a few stress hormones we're going to be talking about are cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. So cortisol is the main stress hormone. It is released from the adrenal cortex and is more closely related to long-term stress, which we will touch on later. And epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, is released from the adrenal medulla and it increases your heart rate. How stress is measured pre and post slaughter. Stress levels are measured differently depending on pre or post slaughter. But what are a few of these ways to measure and how do they work? Well, I'm glad you asked. Firstly, measuring blood levels, specifically looking at stress hormones and blood glucose levels, and this process is done pre-slaughter. Secondly, checking the animal's body temperature. Just as humans and how we check each other's temperature for illness or sickness, you can also check an animal's temperature for its stress levels. And this is also done pre-slaughter. Post slaughter, we will examine the color of the meat. A meat's color is a dead giveaway of if that animal was experiencing stress or trauma. This is post slaughter, as I said. And lastly, checking the firmness or tenderness of the meat. This is post slaughter. By checking the firmness and tenderness of the meat, we can deduct whether or not this animal has been stressed out long term, short term, and this also goes with examining the color of the meat and goat. This can all tie back into the grading of the meat and as well as the quality. So, how stress affects animals, physically and psychologically. So, this is pre slaughter. Stress in animals causes a shift in their decision-making process, causing them to act differently than normal. They will be more rash, more violent, or sometimes just flat out die. Pigs, for example, pigs will become more aggressive, show signs of panic, make a lot of noise, and in rare cases, ears will turn purple and they die. This is a genetic disease known as PSS, also known as porcine or porcine stress syndrome. Cows, on the other hand, cows will breathe heavier, they will tense their muscles, become restless, and more aggressive. And lastly, chickens. Chickens, when stressed, will behave more aggressively. They may isolate themselves, stop eating, and peck at their feathers as well. The three things we can see in common with these three, you know, most commonly slaughtered animals for our consumption are that they do become aggressive when stressed out. And I think that is a thing that most beings do when they are stressed as well. How stress affects meat quality? This is post slaughter. Stress can affect meat quality in only the worst way. Usually, when animals are stressed, the tensing of their muscles causes their meat to be rougher and less tender. But what else does this cause? It can also cause a change in meat color due to the myoglobin leaking out. And myoglobin is also a protein found in muscle cells or the heart. Glycogen is turned into lactic acid. Glycogen turning into lactic acid lowers the pH of the meat product. And once the pH is reduced, that has a possibility of turning into PSE or pale, soft, and exudative. This is most commonly found in pigs. We also have DFD on the other hand, which is dark, firm, and dry, which is more so found in cattle. Why do we care? Animals are one of our main food sources as humans, and they are also a main part of who we are as people and our diets. Although we do eat them, it is important to handle them with care, not only because it is law under the Humane Slaughter Act once they do get slaughtered, but because we care for the quality of food that we eat. What we put into our bodies is very important. And not only for the fact of the health benefits, but we also want to know, and as humans, it is better for us to know that at least what we were eating was handled with proper care and we are getting the best quality food that we pay for. What stress looks like in different animals. So from this graph here, or this chart, or table, I'm sorry, we have stressors in farm animals. So we have physiological, psychological, and physical. All of these things are stressors to the animals and can affect them in a negative way. Stress levels of different animals. So from here we have two pictures. One we have a pig, one we have a cow. So we see that a short-term stressor, which is the example that was used, the pig was poorly handled. So from the brain, a stress signal is sent to the adrenal gland, and then the adrenaline and cortisol in the blood. The glycogen in the muscle and liver is used as an energy source, which means the energy is increased, and so is the body temp and lactic acid buildup, which causes low muscle pH and PSE. After exsanguination, we can find out about the low muscle pH and PSE. So that is post slaughter. And also, as we see in this cow on the right hand side, the glycogen has depleted from the meat, giving it a darker color. And as we see, it says it gives us a lower quality meat, reduced shelf life, and we see that the stress goes in through the handling of the animal, and kind of similar with the pig, the same process happens. So long-term stress versus short-term stress. Long-term versus short-term stressors are two important concepts to understand when talking about animals pre-slaughter, uncovering the separate effects that these two have on the meat quality post-harvest. So long-term stress is defined as a constant feeling of being overwhelmed or pressured that lasts for weeks, months, or even years. It affects meat quality. Its effects on meat quality are very intense. It leads to dark, firmly dry meat or DFD because of the lack of glycogen. And a couple examples of a long-term stressor could be poor nutrition, and just overall horrible living conditions over a prolonged period of time. Even proper handling for a prolonged period of time could stress out an animal long term, which would result in DTFD. On the other hand side, short-term stress is defined as the body's immediate reaction to the sudden threat, lasting minutes or hours. The effect of short-term stress has on meat is a negative one as well, resulting in PSE, or also known as pale, soft, and exudate, giving the meat a nasty look and a softer texture. Not normally desirable by people who like to consume meat. Another example of this is, let's say you stun the animal wrong when trying to rendering it unconscious, then it may be stunned for a second, get back up, which could stress it out or anchor it. Either which way, your meat will not be as tender as it can be. So, in conclusion, the effects of stress, although not all the time are very prominent or outwardly presenting immediately, are absolutely still there. We know this from blood tests or just visual cues from animals. This could be how they act, how they walk around, whatever's going on or in their environment and what's affecting them. The amount of stress put on them is directly correlated to the quality of meat that they will yield. And we know this due to the fact of the color of the meat that they yield, the tenderness of the meat that they yield. This is directly correlated with them in stress. Different animals express their stress in different ways. We know this, but it is always shown it is important to reduce these stressors when handling animals pre-slaughter because we care for the quality of what we are putting in our bodies as well as understanding more so what we put into our bodies as well. Are there any questions or general statements? And if not, here's my reference list. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and that is it.